New Zealand is party to several free trade agreements worldwide. History. The economy of New Zealand is a market economy which is greatly dependent on international trade, mainly with Australia, the United States of America, China and Japan. It is strongly dependent on tourism and agricultural exports, and has only small manufacturing and high-tech components. Economic free market reforms of the last decades have removed many barriers to foreign investment, and the World Bank has praised New Zealand as being the most business-friendly country in the world. Regional and bilateral free trade agreements have become an important part of New Zealand's international trade policy. New Zealand has used free trade agreements, also known as closer economic partnerships, to liberalize trade between economies. A closer economic partnership agreement with Thailand was negotiated in 2004 and implemented in 2005. Negotiations for a free trade agreement with Chile, Brunei and Singapore, known as the Trans-Pacific Strategic Economic Partnership, were concluded in 2005. Negotiations for further agreements with Malaysia were undertaken in 2006, but failed to reach a conclusion. The historic FTA with China was signed in Beijing in April 2008. On the 27th of February 2009, New Zealand and its close partner Australia signed a free trade agreement with the ASEAN regional bloc of 10 countries. It is estimated that an FTA with ASEAN would boost aggregate GDP across the 12 countries by more than $48 billion over the period 2000 to 2020, with an additional $3.4 billion to New Zealand alone. Free trade agreements in force. Here is a list of free trade agreements of which New Zealand is part. In parentheses, the abbreviation, if applicable, membership if not stated before, and the date of coming into force to be seen. Australia, closer economic relations. China, New Zealand, China Free Trade Agreement. Thailand, New Zealand and Thailand closer economic partnership. Singapore, New Zealand and Singapore closer economic partnership. Brunei, Trans-Pacific Strategic Economic Partnership. Chile, Trans-Pacific Strategic Economic Partnership. Singapore, Trans-Pacific Strategic Economic Partnership. Auxiliary to New Zealand and Singapore closer economic partnership. Association of Southeast Asian Nations, negotiating along with Australia since. Malaysia-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement announced on the 2nd of June 2009. Hong Kong, New Zealand, Hong Kong, China closer economic partnership. Taiwan, agreement between New Zealand and the separate customs territory of Taiwan. Penghu, Kinmen, Amatsu on economic cooperation. Proposed free trade agreements. New Zealand is negotiating bilateral and multilateral free trade agreements with the following blocs and countries. Mercosur, New Zealand Mercosur Free Trade Agreement, negotiating since 2010. The Trans-Pacific Strategic Economic Partnership, a multilateral trade agreement involving 4 countries with which New Zealand has existing trade agreements: Malaysia, Brunei, Chile, Singapore, and Australia, and nations with which New Zealand does not have an existing FTA. United States, New Zealand United States Free Trade Agreement. Peru, negotiating alongside the United States, Australia and Vietnam to join the Trans-Pacific Strategic Economic Partnership. Vietnam, negotiating alongside the United States, Australia and Peru to join the Trans-Pacific Strategic Economic Partnership. Japan, conducting feasibility study as of Gulf Cooperation Council. India-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement, negotiating since 2007 with the establishment of a JSG looking at the feasibility of an Indian NZ FTA. Russia-Kazakhstan Belarus Free Trade Agreement, negotiating since 2010. Kazakhstan Belarus New Zealand Free Trade Agreement, negotiating since 2010.